Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Week 5 of the GVSU Football Weekly Report. I'm Steve Lloyd-Jones. We're live here at the Main Street Pub in Allendale. Steve Lloyd-Jones, DJ Foster, Matt Mitchell in a moment. Lakers 4-0, a win on the road, 38-0 over Walsh, and a lot coming at you over the next hour. DJ, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, we'll talk about the 38-0 win over Walsh, the team's biggest shutout since 2010. We'll also preview the upcoming game back to Ohio this weekend against Ohio Dominican, a noon start from Columbus on Saturday afternoon. We'll also bring in E.J. Whitlow, defensive line coach, and one of his guys, Alton Voss. That'll be on later on in the show.
That's right. Schedule tightening up a little bit here. Lakers on the road, another trip into Ohio. All of that ahead as we get started with the GVSU Football Weekly Report with head coach Matt Mitchell here on the Grand Valley Sports Network. Back in a moment.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
And back here on the GVSU Football Weekly Report, you heard the Williams to Williams connection there. DJ Foster with you. That was Steve Lloyd-Jones on the call. We're going to be joined by head coach Matt Mitchell here in a moment as we talk about the 38-0 victory last Saturday in North Canton, Ohio against the Walsh Cavaliers. Mitch, your first road game of the season, your first ever time taking on Walsh, a completely new environment, a new team, and I'd say you fared pretty well. Your largest shutout victory since beating Ferris State back in 2010. You beat them 41-0. You beat Walsh 38-0. And certainly the defense was the story of the game once you put up a 0 on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I said this in the locker room after the game. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Anytime you shut somebody out, I think that's saying something, especially in this kind of modern era to college football with what's going on. So I thought, the whole thing for me was, I said this in the lead up to it. There's kind of two parts of this whole experience. One was everything until the ball was being kicked off, and then once the ball was kicked off until the end of the contest. And so it all started with, our week of preparation and the way that we traveled. I thought we had a very good approach in the way we traveled. That was critical with a bunch of new guys. We have some returners from last year's experience, but we also have a lot of redshirt freshmen, some transfers that haven't traveled that way. So we traveled well on Friday, had a great walkthrough at the University of Toledo, very productive meetings, and our guys got up. And we're ready to go. And we came out here and really started the game pretty dominant in all three phases. We had the kickoff coverage, which was a little bit of a problem in Northern Michigan. Got down there, got great coverage. Grant Post makes a nice play. Get the 3-and-out to start. Set up incredible field position for offense. Went down and scored. And then as the game continued to progress, I thought our defense, got put in a couple tough spots, but did a really nice job. We gave up a fake punt and kind of gave them some field position. We had a couple turnovers, a couple interceptions, which led to some momentum from them. We just came out and just kind of stopped all that. And, we're really flying around. And I told the team it doesn't really matter what you're going to call defensively. If you're very aggressive on the defensive side of the ball, you run around. And we had guys that were high velocity, just really – pursuing to the football. There was a lot of contact. We didn't miss a lot of tackles. They were very disciplined in what we were doing. Obviously, I think Walsh heading into the deal, we've talked a little bit in the deal, they'd been struggling on the offensive side of the ball, but I will give them credit. They really emptied the tank of us offensively. They shifted to some different formations. They emptied things out. Threw a ton of screens. I think obviously they were a little concerned about protecting their quarterback with their O-line, in five-step type routes, so they threw a lot more screens and got the ball out quick. To kind of, in a way, try to negate our defensive line. But we had just great pursuit from inside out. We're setting some edges with our guys on the perimeter and really did a great job all day. And even when we lifted the starters in the third quarter, at the end of the third quarter, and put in some of those reserve guys, they kind of got down there a couple times, but we got some turnovers, forced some turnovers and got off the field, even though they drove a little bit. So, hats off to our coaches and players. And there were some things in that game, DJ, that we had not practiced. There were some things a little bit that they did that were new to us and kind of threw some stuff at us. And, we need to be ready for those situations, and I think our guys handled those very well.
Mitch, you scored 38 points, so it's not like they were super effective on defense, but they did look like they were trying some different things against you. Can you help us non-coaches understand what was the scheme they were trying to pull off?
Well, I think the biggest difference with this contest week 4 to the previous 3 offensively is, we didn't have quite as many explosive plays. And there were some factors that were involved in that. I thought that they did a little bit more movement with their defensive line, some things. And so sometimes there were some dirty runs. There weren't maybe some clean runs where we were getting to the secondary quickly. A few more dirty runs that we kind of had to manage. And then they were doing a good job. Their secondary was being very active and was running around and, creating a little bit of havoc at times. And it made us kind of earn it. I think that's the thing that you see with those drives that we had. It wasn't, one-play scoring drives. We had to, string together some plays, and that's okay. I mean, you're going to face good competition. You're going to face good defenses. You're going to have to do that. You're going to have to string together some plays. But I thought we handled that very well on that side of the ball, just that. And, just a little bit some different stuff with the defensive line than maybe we'd seen. And, we're still talking – I know this is the 4th game of the season, but we still have an offensive lineman that is a work in progress. Offensive line that's a work in progress. Nick Fish, who's starting out right tackle. I mean, this is his first college football ever. He transferred from Illinois State. He didn't play at Illinois State. The last time he has played football was his senior year in high school in Wisconsin in 2013. So we got to keep that in mind. We have a redshirt freshman guard starting, Nate Brady, at our left guard. This is his, he didn't play in the opener. This was his 3rd college start. Ben Walling was out of that contest with an injury, and so Koenigsegg had to move from right tackle to left tackle and go over and start at the left tackle position, which is a little newer for that. So you basically had 3 guys in there that were either playing new positions or hadn't had a ton of experience, and there were some times where we could have been a little bit better, at times. But again, I don't want to throw a bunch of water on the fire. We did score 38 points.
Right.
We got down in the red zone and we scored touchdowns. We had to settle for a field goal once, but we were scoring touchdowns down there. And, so you go back, and obviously you're always in this chase of perfection, kind of when you're a coach at perfection. There's some things that, we were a little disappointed with, but the overall outcome and the way we approached it wasn't too bad. Again, we continue to do a pretty good job offensively with a lot of substitution patterns, a lot of different plays, a lot of different formations. We're handling that well. You're not seeing a whole lot of false starts, us having to call timeouts, things happen. I think we're executing offensively, and we're growing. We're growing on that side of the ball as we continue to progress in 2016.
Here on the GVSU Football Weekly Report with Matt Mitchell. This segment is brought to you by Cardinal Buses. Go in comfort, go in style, and go green. Go with Cardinal Buses. Coach, I know the stats don't always tell the whole story, but is there anything that you really saw that you really liked? I mean, when you look at it, 203 rushing yards, 201 passing yards, so nearly identical right down the line. You only punted 1 time, and it was a 54-yard punt. 12 of 15 third-down conversions, as you mentioned. Great. 5 of 5 in the red zone. Any of those mean anything more? Is there anything else that you saw that you liked?
Well, you hit upon it. The big statistical things for me, obviously winning the football game, that's the number one stat, trying to get 1-0 anytime you play. That goes without saying. But, beyond that, as we dig deeper, it's really about, for us, we approach things from a team standpoint. Turnover differential is huge. We wish we could have had the 2 picks back, and those aren't just on our quarterback. That's an entire offensive statistic. But we did force, some turnovers defensively, so we're positive on that end. The explosive play differential, that's a big deal. If you look at college football right now, that might be the number one statistic. There's been teams here, even in 2016, FBS, FCS D2, that have lost the turnover margin and won because they've been more explosive and haven't given up a lot of explosive plays. The 0 equates to this, but our starting defense did not give up 1 explosive play, which for us is a run over 12 or a pass over 16. Our starters only gave up 1 of those, and that wasn't until the 3rd quarter. We gave up 3 for the game, which is, unheard of just in terms of big chunk plays. And then, I think looking back last year, when you take a look at the Ashland loss, when you take a look at the Shepherd loss in the playoffs, we made a big emphasis on the 3rd down conversion percentage differential. What percentage are we converting at offensively, and how is that margin compared to what we're giving up offensively? Our 3rd down conversion percentage differential between our offense and defense has been very drastic this first 4 games. We're converting at a very high rate on 3rd downs. We're getting off the field, and that is really huge. As you mentioned, 12-15, we were 80% offensively, and I think we only gave up 35% defensively. So you're looking at a 45% differential in terms of the third down conversion percentage. That is massive.
Yeah.
And then the red zone. We struggled times offensively in the red zone last year. And, again, we love Skip, but we don't want to settle for field goals. We want to try to get touchdowns when we're down in there. And if you look at a big stat we are hammering with our kids is points per red zone possession. So every time you get into the red zone, how many points are you averaging per possession? We averaged 6 points per red zone possession last week. And then defensively, when they got in the red zone, we didn't give up a point. So we had a +6 points per red zone possession differential. Those are the stats that you win games. If you can win turnover battle, explosive play battle, third down conversion percentage differential, and also the red zone points per red zone possession differential, if you win all 4 of those, that's how it gets to 38-0. And you start winning, 3 or 4 of those, you're probably winning the game. 2 or 4 of those, you got a pretty good chance. You lose and you start going on the other side of that, you're probably going to lose the game. So that's how we view the game from a statistical standpoint, and that's something we're trying to hammer. And those situational footballs we've talked on the show is really important. And so having a great third down plan on both sides of the ball, having a great red zone plan, we practice those things 2 times throughout the course of the week. Those are critical factors in our success.
Speaking of big plays, Nick Dotson, it was kind of his turn for wideouts, each guy taking a week. As Dotson this week, he leads the way with 4 grabs, 99 total yards, and a TD. Highlight reel catch with one-handed. Neat to see Nick Kaiser also get a couple of catches. He's an athletic tight end, and it's just a nightmare for a defense trying to look at all of these targets to throw to. And, oh, by the way, Marty Carter's in the backfield, to run the ball.
Yeah, it helps. It helps to have I talk about this in recruiting a lot, and I talk about our staff. We talk about a distribution of talent. We have to try to build a roster that has a distribution of talent. And so I definitely think that we have that at the wide receiver core. I think not only do we have some good players, we have some diverse players in terms of their skill sets. I heard this from – I don't know if it was Mike Leach or Hal Mummy or a coach, but you try to build your wide receiver core a little bit like a starting 5 in basketball. If you have all big guys, it's probably going to catch up to you at some point in time. And if you're all little guys, little point guard guys that, do the stuff, it's going to catch up to you at some point. So I think we've tried to, and as I progressed as a head coach, I've gotten better at this. And we take a look at our wide receiver core, trying to create diversity in the type of players. Nick Dotson is more like a point guard. When you take a look at his skill sets, he's a 5'9", 5'10" kid. Great change of direction, does have good top-end speed, got good ball skills. He's not going to be like Erskine Smith in terms of the physical dominant presence. They're different. So in the particular play you talked about, we ran an out route in the boundary, and the throw was a little bit behind him, makes a nice one-handed grab behind him, and then I think caught a lot of people off balance in their defense. He went and scored. I don't know if a bigger receiver would have scored a touchdown on that specific play, but Dotson is able to do that, and kind of get going. So having that diversity, we can move those guys around. That's the other thing that, I think is critical, as you mentioned, is they don't always line up at the same spots. I think they've got enough experience and they're intelligent enough, and Coach Ken does a good job that we can put them at different spots and do some different things. And so we're not too tendency, and we're not, just having Erskine in the boundary and Matt. We're doing some different things with those guys, which will make us harder to defend, I think, moving forward.
Well, coming up after the break, we're going to talk with an assistant coach, as we like to do. And this week it's going to be defensive line coach E.J. Whitlow.
Obviously, that's been a strength of our team here, last year and head into this year's our defensive line. We have a lot of returning starters. He's got a very senior-laden crew. When you take a look at Alton Voss, DJ Hogan, Mark-Eric Rosenquist, and Sidney Omame, you're talking, Sonny Haskins, don't want to forget him. It's kind of rare to have 5 seniors on the defensive line. And so that's a group that he's been with now for 3 years, has grown and developed, and then obviously had something to do, along with Matt Yochis, with the development of Matt Judon, who's playing in the NFL and traveling and having an impact.
Well, sounds good. We're going to talk with EJ coming up next. This is the GVSU Football Weekly Report with head coach Matt Mitchell here on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
Now we're back inside the Main Street Pub here in Allendale. Steve Lloyd-Jones, DJ Foster, joined by defensive line coach E.J. Willow, our guest this week, in his third year with the Lakers. Show brought to you by GVSUTeamShop.com. Authentic Laker apparel for every game. Is Grand Valley at 4-0. Week 5 of the season now. They'll be on the road Saturday at Ohio Dominican. But the Lakers, we're going to throw out a quick number here, talking about the defensive line. Defense, of course, as a whole, but Lakers right now rank first in the GLIAC, 8th nationally in quarterback sacks with 16. It's good for minus 91 yards total there. Also ranking first in the GLIAC, 17th nationally in tackles for loss with 36, and of course the defensive line a big part of that.
Yeah, and EJ, talk to us about that a little bit, because as you heard Coach Mitchell say before we went to the break, you guys lost Matt Judon from last year, a guy in the NFL, and there's not a lot of schools who would be able, especially at the Division II level, who would be able to be leading the GLIAC in sacks the next year after losing a guy as productive as Matt Judon. But the names that he listed, Alton Voss will be with us later, Mark Rosenquist, DJ Hogan, Sidney Omame, who joined obviously late in the summer. You guys have pretty much brought a good group back, and they've certainly been productive these first few weeks.
Oh, definitely, and I know people ask all the time, well, how do you replace a guy like Matt Judon? And the answer is you don't replace him with one guy. You replace him with a group of guys coming together, being a collective as a unit, and everyone doing their job. And when you talk about sacks and TFLs and everything like that, it's not just the defensive line. It's the DBs in the back end covering guys up, the linebackers doing their jobs, getting us lined up, and everybody doing their part as a defense, 11 as one. And so we definitely take pride in that as a unit, a defensive unit.
EJ, I think for fans, a lot of us, we watch a game and we think, oh, playing defensive line, just pin your ears back, go get the quarterback, play the run. A lot more to it than that, I know. From your standpoint as a coach, what is the toughest thing to teach a defensive lineman?
I would say the toughest thing to teach a defensive lineman is eye control. I mean, you get a lot of guys from high school and everything like that, and it's all about see ball, get ball. I'm going to go out there and make every single tackle. And I have to tell those guys all the time, you never seen a guy on a stat sheet make 60 tackles in a game. It's all about doing your 111th, eyes in the right place, and playing with good technique and discipline and making the plays that you're supposed to make.
So let me just follow up with that. What do you mean more by that? If I'm a defensive end and it's a running play, where should my eyes be?
If you're a defensive end, it's a running play. We talk about is the offensive tackle in a three-point stance, is in a two-point stance. If he's in a three-point stance, your eyes should be locked in on his near shoulder. If he's in a two-point, near knee, and kind of getting all your run, pass, read, keys off of what he does.
Very good.
Now, how difficult was it to take a guy, let's say, like Alton Voss, who was a quarterback in high school and obviously a great athlete, and you guys kind of bounced him around a little bit on offense, some special teams, and now he's just become a great player on the defensive line. And I believe he came in maybe the same year or just right around you, so you've been able to work with him over the couple of years. How was his transition from maybe the offensive side of the ball, but turning him into a legitimate defensive lineman?
Oh, it was definitely a good transition, or a great transition for Voss, with the fact that he's played some special teams or kickoff, where he had to run down and tackle, and some of the basis of playing on the defensive side of the football. And the great thing about Voss is he's a physical guy, even though he played quarterback and that was kind of his roots. But he's a physical, tough guy, and and he was willing and wanted to learn and get better. He takes pride in his craft and doing the little things, and he even changed his body from a quarterback / tight end body to a defensive lineman body. So I think it was a easy transition for me and him both, because he was committed to the process.
Talking with defensive line coach E.J. Whitlow tonight, our assistant coach interview, all part of the GVSU Football Weekly Report. This segment also presented by Earhart Construction, the official construction company of the Grand Valley Sports Network. And E.J., lots of spread attacks. They're all a little different that we've seen so far. The different styles of offenses, how tough is that for a defensive lineman to match up with? I'm sure it depends on their skill set, but how difficult is it to go against a spread as opposed to a power team coming at you?
Well, the big thing for us is, we talk about it all the time, it's not about them, it's about us. It's about taking care of our business with the TNTs, the things that don't take any talent. Eye control, our attitude, our effort, our approach, and how we go about our business when it comes on game day. So the spread approach, power approach, at the end of the day, if we play with good technique, we play with good effort, we're more physical than the opposing offensive line, we'll be fine.
Coach, I'm sure you know 4 games so far, 0 first half touchdowns. What does that mean to the guys in your room, the defensive linemen? Certainly it's a win for the whole defense, but what does that specifically mean for you guys and you as a coach maybe?
Oh, I mean, you definitely take great pride in playing great defense. This is what we do. We put a lot of hour, time, and preparation into Saturday, and to go out there and be able to get after an opponent and don't surrender any points.
Right.
That's a good feeling. And the big thing is you got to remember to stay humble and hungry and stay true to the process. And every week is a new week. You're 0-0 every week, so you got to stay focused and remember that the end of the goal is to go 1-0 each week.
It's a very defensive show here this week, as that's E.J. Whitlow, our defensive line coach. And as I said, later on we'll talk with Alton Voss, who you've heard him talk so highly of. And maybe we'll talk about Alton's beard a little bit when he comes on. He's got one of the best beards on the team, no doubt about it.
He does have a good beard.
He does. I'm jealous. E.J., thanks so much for joining us. Continued success the rest of the year.
Thank you. Love being here.
That's E.J. Whitlow, the defensive line coach for Grand Valley State. We'll come back and we'll break down Ohio Dominican, the Lakers' opponent this Saturday, a noon start from Columbus. It's all presented by GVSUTeamShop.com right here on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
Welcome back to the GVSU Football Weekly Report. That was Steve Lloyd-Jones on the play-by-play there as Grand Valley State won 38-0 last Saturday at Walsh. They'll return to Ohio this weekend against Ohio Dominican. DJ Foster here with you. We're going to bring head coach Matt Mitchell back on. Thanks to E.J. Whitlow, defensive line coach, for joining us last segment. Now we turn our attention to Ohio Dominican in the opponent breakdown, which is brought to you by Kent Equipment Solutions that turn work into play. And Coach, Ohio Dominican 2-2 on the year. All 4 of those have been conference games. A tough loss early on in the season at Ferris State. They lost a close game to Michigan Tech, have defeated Findlay, and defeated Saginaw Valley State. Their defense looks solid, as it has been, and certainly since they've joined the conference, they've had your attention because they've seemed to play you well every year.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, this is a good program. Obviously making the transition from NAI Division II. They did a nice job with Bill Conley. Then Bill Conley stepped down, and they promoted Kelly Cummings, their defensive coordinator, as head coach, so obviously very similar to when I got promoted as head coach from being the defensive coordinator, so I've known Coach Cummings for a while. Also, the last year they're going to play in the GLIAC, making the transition out. So, a defensive head coach, and that shows up when you look at their team. I think that it's been an interesting season for them. They came in the opener and played Ferris State, which is an option-based team with a new quarterback who was a transfer from Eastern Michigan. And, there were some different things Ferris was doing based on their personnel. ODU struggled a little bit in that game when guys got out in space. And then they came back and they got up big against Findlay. I think they're up 28-3 at one point, and then Findlay started coming back a little bit on them, and they ended up kind of shutting the door on Findlay. Really a hard-fought home game with Michigan Tech that could have gone either way. Just a matter of one more possession here or there. That game, to tell you how defensive-oriented are, that game, the complete runtime was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. I mean, it was over. Wow. It was done. So it's a good game to be a radio guy. Bad game to be the ad salesman. But it was over really quick, and it was a defensive battle. Then last week, they really a defensive battle, too. They ended up making a few more plays and kind of did that. But their defense is good. It's well coached. It has some new players on it, but their defensive line is an active defensive line. They're very well coached. They're not going to give up a lot of cheap plays. You're going to have to earn a lot of things on them. I think offensively, they've struggled a little bit offensively. They lost a lot of offensive playmakers from the last couple seasons. A couple all-conference wideouts including one that went to an NFL camp, and then I've lost some running backs, Brandon Schoen and the kid that played last year. They've lost almost all of their skill players at the wide receiver running back position. But they still have Grant Russell, and we have a lot of respect for Grant Russell. Grant Russell is a really competitive kid. You can tell that on tape. I mean, he just goes. They run everything goes through him. They run, quarterback runs, design quarterback runs. They run speed option. There's a lot of things that Grant's involved in, and then he'll throw back and throw the ball. He's completing 62% of his passes. So a lot is on his shoulders to make the thing run right now based on their experience on the edges of their team and their offensive line. And so that's probably why they've struggled a little bit offensively. Just a lot of new faces. There's a lot of new faces, and you play Ferris's defense, you play Michigan Tech's defense. I think Saginaw's defense is pretty good. They've also gone against some really good defenses here at the beginning of the season. And so you take everything within context. A lot of the statistics at this time of the year, I don't even look at the league statistics. I don't look at any national statistics. There's not a big enough sample size. There's only a 4-game sample size. There's not the parity. I think league statistics can become relevant once everybody's played the entire schedule. Before that, they're not relevant statistics. So we take a look. It's on tape. We take a look at the personnel. This is a defense that will provide a challenge and is hands down the best defense we'll have played up to this point in our schedule.
Yeah, got to be a stiff challenge, no doubt about that. In the same thought, it was interesting listening to Bart Williams kind of break down the first time, the only time that he played at Ohio Dominican last year, his first road start, and how far he has come from that point. I mean, that was one of the hardest hitting games of the year. He came through with big plays, again, week 2 of the season. But to see his progress from that point, I mean, it's got to be just astounding.
Yeah, well, this game last year down there, like you said, was game 2. It was a jumping point to our season. Things could have completely turned different had that been a little bit of a different outcome, And so they were a team that had a lot of guys coming back, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We were at their place. That was a hard-fought victory, a really hard-fought victory. And it was, Bart Williams' really first test as a quarterback. And, he's the first to admit he had some mistakes here and there. But at the end of the day, when we needed the game-winning drive, Bart helped engineer that and made some third downs. It kind of showed a little bit of that moxie and that little bit of who he is as a player. And I think that's the thing that last week, too, not to jump too much back to last week, but things got a little messy at times, just because of Walsh, what they're doing, both from a scheme standpoint. We talked about Steve and their players, stuff like that. The guy that really rose to the occasion was Bart, and he scrambled on some third downs, made some plays, threw some balls into some tight windows, did some things when it wasn't clean. And sometimes that's the mark of the best player, when things aren't going as orchestrated or as planned, when things start to break down, who's somebody that can step up and make some plays. And I think Bart did that last year against Ohio Dominican. He just kind of had some of that natural playmaking ability. So fully anticipate it's going to be similar this week. We're going to really need him to manage our game and do a great job. And this is one of those games because of the strength of the defenses. I think both teams have very strong defenses. You can't afford to have turnovers, bad special teams plays. A lot of those type of things can hurt you in those situations. So that'll be very important for our offense to make sure we don't turn the ball over.
And maybe this is a question for the keys to the game segment, which is coming up next. But the travel again, back to Ohio, a noon start in a smaller stadium, certainly than what we're used to. Obviously, last week against Walsh was kind of the same thing. How does that play into it? At least you went there last year, so the guys were maybe a little more acclimated to it. Against Walsh last week, nobody had ever been there before, so
Sure.
This may be a little bit different. But how does that change with travel plans and everything?
Well, I tell you, I'm glad ODU was after Walsh. I'll tell you that because we are carbon copying our travel plans from the previous weekend to this weekend. So consequently, I don't think there's going to be really new. Say anything new for our guys that haven't experienced really a whole lot of that. And then that gets back to what I talked about, the 2 portions of things. There's everything leading up to the kickoff, and then there's obviously the kickoff itself. So, we have a format, we have a plan, like most things at Grand Valley football, with experience based on, all of our experience as coaches, how to do things. I do think the noon start is going to be a little bit of a different deal. Most of that game tomorrow, the game on Saturday, will be done by 3 p.m. About every other experience in our lives, we start about 3 p.m. Like we have a home game, like we do pregame meal at 3. Like nothing happens before 3 p.m. on a home game, and now everything is going to be done by 3 p.m. So yeah, that's going to be the challenge. We talked about sleep, about getting rest, trying to get our body in frame of the time schedule, just because it is going to be a little bit more new to us. But we are going to have some other noon games coming on down the road, especially the last one away, and so not a bad one to do.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. Tough road test for the Lakers this week at Ohio Dominican. Well, after the break, as DJ mentioned, we get into the keys to the game here, what the Lakers need to do to get a big road win. It's week 5 of the season, and we'll continue with the GVSU Football Weekly Report with head coach Matt Mitchell right here in the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
Back inside the Main Street Pub here in Allendale. Lakers, that highlight there, all part of a 38-0 win last week at Walsh. This week on the road again in Ohio as they go to Ohio Dominican, a noon start there Saturday. Coming up 11 o'clock with the coverage on the pregame show, network-wide. That's this Saturday at Ohio Dominican. All right, Steve Lloyd-Jones, DJ Foster, head coach Matt Mitchell back with you. And time for the keys to the game. It's presented by Fox Motors, only the best. Coach, you know best. What are the keys to victory?
Well, I think this is a game where physical play is going to be really, really paramount. I think our defense is going to have to match the physicality. What I think has been a little bit unique with our schedule up to this point, Steve, is we've faced a lot of teams that have been spread teams, 10 teams that didn't really commit to any type of a substantial running attack. They just didn't use tight ends or anybody to try to set edges and try to run the ball. It's been all 10 personnel, about a bunch of east-west, a bunch of flim-flam, a bunch of soft runs, to be honest with you. So what we're getting into now, and it will continue to build as we go through the GLIAC, is you're going to see more physical run schemes. Like the schemes are going to be more downhill. They're going to be at you. And so I think it's really critical that our defense, on paper, we should be a physical unit. We should be able to fit the run, and we got to do it, though. They're going to have to do that. They're going to attempt to try to run the ball, and they're going to use a tight end in the run game, and they're going to use some quarterback runs, too, and he's a very physical runner. So this would be a physical test for our defense, just from that standpoint. Then I would like to see our offense a little bit more physical than it was last week. If there's one thing you take a look at, I think when some of the opposition started doing some of those D-line movements, we got a little tentative up front on the offensive line, and we weren't attacking the line of scrimmage and being as physical as we can. And being physical on offense is not just the offensive line; it's all 11 of them. We got to have backs that are not. They're going to realize there's going to be some tough yardage in this game because of the nature of their defense, and we got to finish runs. We have to have physical runs. We finish runs. So our wideouts are going to have to be physical in the line of scrimmage when they're trying to get off press coverage and things. And they're also have to be physical after they catch the ball. And so really can tell how things are going based on when you take a look at our offense. Are we coming off the ball with a little bit of vigor and getting after people? And are we finishing runs with our skill players, both with the right wide receivers and with the running backs? And then it's our defensive line controlling the line of scrimmage. You can watch that from the press box view. Are they moving us or not moving us? And so that'll be really critical, in my opinion, is just the physical nature of this. This is the type of game. You're going on the road. It's a noon start. It's in Columbus, Ohio. You need to have a physical mindset when you go out there and warm up. So put a little bit more air in your helmet, buckle it up, bite down on your mouthpiece, and get ready to have a little bit more contact than we've had probably the first 4 weeks.
And one of those guys who's certainly is a physical player for you, Sidney Omame. And he obviously has a very interesting situation this week. He played at Ohio Dominican last year, for those obviously who don't know. Played there for his career and transferred up here this summer. Not only is that weird, but now he's going back to play in the same field he played in college. If it was here at Lubbers, maybe it's a little bit different, but he's playing the same guys, same field, same everything. How interesting of a situation is that? This is the token question because it's a weird deal. You don't normally see it in college football.
No, it's unique. I mean, obviously, I've never experienced. I think he also grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and all of his family and extended family is going to go from the ODU sideline to the GV sideline, and so that is a unique dynamic, And I've asked him a couple times about it. He's also a 6-year senior. He's a grown-ass man, so I'm not going to get in his business too much. Like, he understands the dynamic of this whole thing. I do think that there's going to be a lot of things that occur probably in pregame warm-ups and before the ball snap, but at the end of the day, when the ball snapped, he's still playing football, and he's playing football against those guys. So, I don't know that it'll be I don't know that it'll make a massive difference in terms of the outcome. I think it's a byline to the bigger story, which is the game itself. Sure. There's this subplot. I don't disagree that there's a subplot going on there, but it's secondary to the everybody out there. And I really think that when you're talking about Ohio Dominican and us, we're not going to do anything with our schemes or do anything with our players to alter things based on him being out there and having played there. I just don't think that's going to happen. So, and if they want to try to do something to him, probably good for us because that means they're getting out of their game plan. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's the type of organization they are. They're going to line up and play. I'm sure he's going to have some juice heading into the contest. I'm sure they're going to have some juice heading into the contest. I think our players will have some juice because he has developed some relationships here, and there are guys on his roster that have grown to respect him based on what his contributions both in practice and what he's done in the locker room. And so there's always competition. That's the nature of athletics. There's going to be competition. This is a little bit more of a byline that feeds into it. And again, I'll get on the sidelines and get a feel for it. It is unique for me, and I've kind of discussed it. But for the most part, it's been more about us and what do we have to do. And we're not going to make a big deal about the return trip down there for him.
Those are the keys to the game, presented by Fox Motors, only the best. And when we come back, one of Sydney's teammates along the defensive line, Alton Voss, will join the show. It'll be our player interview. That'll be a fun one. Alton with the best beard in the GLIAC, I think, so far in the year. So we'll be excited to talk to him. Maybe not about the beard, but maybe. As Coach Mitchell obviously has a good one going, too. So we'll talk about that. GVSU Football Weekly Report with Matt Mitchell is coming back. It's presented by GVSUTeamShop.com, authentic Laker apparel for every game.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
And how about that, Alton Voss? Great highlight. Great career. Awesome game there last week on the road. The GVSU Football Weekly Report with head coach Matt Mitchell. As Alton making that play. The Lakers, great job with tackles for loss. It's time for our player interview segment brought to you by Country Dairy, the official milk of GVSU Athletics. Alton Voss and head coach Matt Mitchell.
Thanks, Steve. Joined by Alton Voss, our senior defensive end. As DJ mentioned, we both have beards. The difference is I don't artificially color mine in my older age, whereas you are just using some type of a just for men cover-up to maintain your black. Accurate or no?
False.
Okay. Don't believe you, but that's okay. He can maintain that party line. Okay, so long and winding path to GVSU. We do not have enough time to probably do it right. I think your story has been pretty well documented since you've been here, and I think there's some things on YouTube and stuff that people can kind of check out. But talk to me. There was a little bit of long length from playing high school football and even maybe the South Florida experiences to coming to GV. What do you remember when you first stepped back into the fold here in the mix? What were your thoughts?
I was grateful for the opportunity. And when I came back from Argentina, I came to West Michigan, and Coach Mitchell, you gave me an opportunity to play ball. And I remember just showing up. There's a bunch of guys who are younger than me, and I just felt like I had to go out here and prove that I could play with these guys. And the summer was here, and I just tried to work as hard as I could. And that's been my approach every day since I've been here at Grand Valley.
started off in our program, we started you at tight end, but really made your mark specifically in the 2013 season when you look back upon things in the playoff run of the semifinals. Made a really big mark on the special teams. And made a lot of plays, had a fake punt to get with you in the West Texas A&M game, that went for some big yardage, things like that. So made the decision after that it was probably in everybody's best interest to go from the tight end position over to playing D-end, a position you'd never played in your life, had been a high school quarterback and also played a little bit of linebacker, but more a guy without your hand on the ground. Talk about, moving down to that defensive line and some of the adjustments you had to make.
It was definitely a different type of transition. I had a broken hand, so I'm trying to play defensive line and learn the technique and be physical. I only kind of had one hand to do that. But Coach Whitlow and the rest of the guys and the position group, they did a really good job of just, teaching me the ropes of how we do things. And, I just try to be, fast and physical and be in the right place when the ball's coming my way and make a play when I have to. So it's kind of that's how I've approached everything.
Fast forward, obviously, been playing a lot at the defensive end position, head into your senior year. Talk about, your skill set. What do you think that you're the best at, just in terms of your play as a defensive lineman?
I would say in the run game, I feel like I'm pretty I'm tough in the run game. I'm physical coming off the line. In the pass game, I have some speed and I have some power. I think I'd like to believe I have some pretty good pass rushing skills, but that's always room for improvement if you ask Coach Whitlow. But yeah, I'd say in the run game I'm pretty stout.
Okay, and like I said, a little bit of a winding path. Are you 27 or 28?
Turned 28 this month.
28 this month. Yeah. Okay, so you're a 28-year-old and you're in a locker room with a bunch of 18-year-old guys. How does that go down? Is there any challenge? Serious question. Is there any challenges ever being the elder statesman, within our building? Has that ever provided any challenges for you?
It has not. I think everything I've done in the field, people have realized I have grown man strength, so they really don't challenge me on anything. And then when there's conversation going on, I'm just kind of the outsider looking in because a lot of things they talk about, I have no idea what they're talking about.
That's probably a good thing for you. Not for me, but for you. So, as you take a look at this year, talk a little bit about our team and our team on the field, but maybe a little bit more of a behind-the-scenes look. And, you've got a different perspective. Like a lot of these guys that come straight from high school, college football, it's just all this stuff. You've lived life. Like you've had some really, like I said, you can go online and Google Alton Voss and find out, but you've had some serious life experiences, and you're going through this thing in 2016. What do you value the most about your experience right now in this window of opportunity?
I would say what I value most with our football team is the sense of family. I've been here. This would be my fourth season. I guess I came in with a freshman class, but we have matured and we have grown to love each other. We're brotherhood. We're family. But being the older guy, I try and I help young guys or anybody has a question when it comes to anything, football related or even off the field. I mean, we had a guy this past week had a public speaking event because I share my story. He asked for some help, and so I went there and accompanied him and helped him out. So, I mean, I try and be that 20, 21-year-old guy with my teammates, but then also step back where I'm 28 and have some experience and try and help some guys out. If there's any off the field stuff or even on the field.
So when your playing career is done, talk a little bit about what you're into academically and what your degree is going to finish up when you get your degree and what you hope to do maybe at the next step of your life.
So my degree will be communication studies. I'd like to do outside sales. I do public speaking, so I'd like to turn that into somewhat of a profession on the weekends. And, just kind of see where that goes from there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you having on. I got to wrap up. Like I said, if you've never heard of Alton's story, it is very, very unique. It'll never happen again in my career probably. And there's plenty of stuff online to kind of talk about his journey, where he's got. But kudos to you. A lot of credit for where you've been and where you're at right now. And we appreciate everything you've done for our program. And it's not just about the on-field production. There's a lot of things behind the scenes, too. So I appreciate that. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks for coming in there, Alton. Appreciate that. The GVSU Football Weekly Report will continue after this. Going to take a look around the GLIAC and talk about some of the things going on in the conference. That's up next on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
Welcome back inside the Main Street Pub in Allendale. Steve Lloyd-Jones, DJ Foster back with us. Of course, head coach Matt Mitchell. Our thanks to Alden Voss there in that last segment. Quick look around the GLIAC right now, and we look back last week, the big matchup there, Ashland going to Ferris State. And, Coach, your thoughts on that as Ashland gets a big road win?
Yeah, big win for Ashland. You know, we were kind of following along on the play-by-play on the bus. We were on the bus on the way home from North Canton. So Ferris jumped out to a big lead. I think that is 17-point lead at halftime, you know. But Ashland's, they're explosive. They got a lot of returning starters. And, I mean, kudos to Ashland's defensive staff and players. I mean, give up 31 in the first half and shut them out in the second half. You don't typically see that, you know, to come away with some turnovers and things like that. So that was obviously a big win for Ashland. And, you know, it sets up at this point in time now. There's only 2 undefeated teams in the GLIAC. We're only really like 4 weeks into the season. You've got 2 teams that are undefeated. So, again, I think that speaks more than anything to the parity within our conference, the competitive level within our conference. There's some really good teams in our conference, and there were some scores that, you know, I didn't even really anticipate the, you know, what Hillsdale did to Michigan Tech was pretty striking. I think that was a 51-24 affair. Down there, you know, and didn't, you know, necessarily. I didn't see that coming that way. So, yeah, it's week in, week out. You know, it's week in, week out. There's probably a couple weaker teams, you know, in Ohio. But you start looking at all these Michigan teams. Northwood gives everything that Ferris can handle 2 weeks ago. Northern Michigan gets a really big win against Northwood at home. Tech's always good. I think Wayne State is good. Hillsdale with that big win. Ferris, us. I mean, it's some really competitive football overall in our conference. And you take a look at our schools here in the home state of Michigan. Same can be said.
So looking ahead to this week, Ashland, one of the undefeated teams, they go to Tiffin, which could be interesting if Antonio Pipkin really plays well. The Dragons are 2-2, but maybe aside from our matchup with Ohio Dominican is Hillsdale Wayne State, a pair of 3-1 teams. Maybe not expected to be at that point this early in the season, but should be a great game in Detroit. 6 p.m. start.
Yeah, I think that's going to be obviously that's a really critical game for both of these teams to try to stay relevant within the conference race. You know, they both got 1 loss, and you get pegged with the second loss. That's going to put you, you know, behind the 8 ball just in terms of continuing out through the course of the season, and also an interesting matchup for us to follow as we have, not that I'm looking ahead, but we have both of those teams are on our schedule, so it's not like teams who don't play. And Chance Stewart, the quarterback from Hillsdale, put up some big numbers against Michigan Tech, and Wayne State, Romello Brown is one of the top rushers in the nation, and so they have a really strong rushing attack going right now. So that'll be a big matchup. Those are rivals, you know, pretty fierce rivals between those, and that'll be in Wayne, you know, in Detroit. So that'll be a really interesting score for us to follow, and that'll be again something I'll follow on the way on the bus ride home.
It's our Team Landscape segment presented by Modern Office, brings spaces to life. Again, Grand Valley State at Ohio Dominican this Saturday, a noon start from Columbus. We'll wrap things up when we come back. We'll ask Coach, we'll put him on the hot seat, give him the Coors Light ice cold question when we come back. Right here on the GVSU Football Weekly Report with Matt Mitchell. It's all brought to you on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
Back here for the final time in the GVSU Football Weekly Report. Before we wrap things up here, we'd like to thank one of our fine sponsors, Allendale. True Value. Behind every project is a true value. And, Coach, you won't be playing in Lover Stadium this weekend, but somebody will be. We wanted to talk about that tomorrow night at 7 p.m. The #1 ranked Grand Valley State soccer team is hosting Friday night football. They'll be playing Tiffin, football I guess I should probably pronounce it as. They'll take on Tiffin at 7 p.m. Grand Valley's the 3-time defending national champions, and we're trying to set a Division II attendance record for women's soccer. The original record is 3,227 fans. Certainly for a football game, we would blow that out of the water, but we're trying to do that for soccer as well. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., first 1,000 students get a GVSU scarf. So you won't be using the stadium or the field, but soccer team will. What are your thoughts on that? Pretty cool.
No, it's not my stadium; it's our stadium. So
there we go. Okay,
let's use it. We put a we put a new video board in, and I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a cool event. I'm glad that be a member of an athletic department that's always trying to stretch and reach and do different things, and this is an indication of our ability to be flexible and do some things a little bit outside the box. So we had practice today from 3 to 5, and then they were down on the pitch, I guess you would call it, right after us, and got in on it. So we saw them on the way up. They were coming down. So obviously a very strong program. They've kind of been on the other end of the campus, so pretty cool.
So coming out to Lover Stadium tomorrow night, Friday night football, Grand Valley State and Tiffin at 7 p.m. All right, it's time for the Coors Light Ice Cold Question. It's presented by Alliance Beverage. Coors products distributed locally in the West Michigan area by Alliance Beverage. And you kind of alluded towards this earlier in the show. You're talking about Nick Dotson. You're talking about having the different wide receivers. And we were talking before, so if this question is bad, you can blame Steve. Brandon Bean, Matt Williams, Nick Dodson, Erston Smith. If you were playing fantasy football and you had to pick one of these guys for your team, one of the wide receivers, who would you pick and why? You got Bean with the most catches, Erston Smith the most yards, Matt Williams and Erston Smith the most touchdowns. Which one of those guys would you go with?
Well, I would go.
And they're all listening, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all listening. Well, we always have this massive argument about who has the best hands, and I never commit myself to anything. So I suppose I'm going to have to commit myself to something here right now. I would go with Nick Dotson because there's not anything he can't do. And I'm not dissing those other three.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're taking it as that.
Yeah, they are. But you could put Nick at WHX, and you can run him on any route in our offense, and he'll find a way to get the job done. And those other guys, a little bit more niche guys, have a little bit of what they do the best, and their things. But I'd probably throw it up to Nick if I had to choose one.
Very cool.
That's good. All right. Well, that'll wind things down tonight. Our thanks to E.J. Whitlow and along with Alden Voss as well for joining us this evening. For Brian Fongers in the studio, E.J. Foster, Matt Mitchell here. I'm Steve Lloyd-Jones. Thanks for listening to the GVSU Football Weekly Report with head coach Matt Mitchell right here on the Grand Valley Sports Network.